Those taken from us stay in our hearts, so they can never be fully lost.
You are such a genuine gem. Thank you for clicking on my video. I'm Brooke Makenna, but today's case is the true crime case of a missing teen with evidence found and a convicted killer, but still no body. What happened to Alexis Murphy? This case is such a crazy one that will leave you so confused and angered in the end that I encourage you to listen to every detail, because it may be a longer one, but it is so important. By the way, I post so much content like this, so if you are interested in hearing these victim stories, then please go ahead and subscribe down below and share any of these videos or the information that I give to you. Now let's get back to the story. Alexis Murphy was a 17-year-old beauty with a contagious personality. She was the middle child of two brothers and her family that lived in Shipman, Virginia. It was August of 2013 and she was going into her senior year as the co-captain of the volleyball team and just was a pretty popular girl among all of her classmates. That's just what she was known as. She had such a bubbly personality that everyone loved. Alexis was said to be the type of girl that could gather the attention of the entire room simply by walking in. Now, she was a confident girl, but she was the type that didn't know she was, or at least didn't say that and act like she was better than anybody because of how beautiful she really was. But she did love to do her makeup and her hair and get all fancy at times, and so when her senior pictures were coming up, she knew that she really wanted to prepare for them and just be the best version of herself that she could be. So she decided on Saturday, August 3rd of 2013 to do that very thing and to prepare for her pictures that were the next Wednesday. Except she would never actually make it to that photo shoot. That day, Alexis had actually gotten a raise at the children's consignment shop that she worked for called Kid to Kid. That was in Charlottesville, about 45 minutes away from her hometown in Shipman. But that day she came home, and later that night she was telling her mother that she wanted to go and buy some extensions from a beauty store for her senior pictures. And she was going to head out to Lynchburg, which was 40 minutes the opposite direction of her job. And she had talked to her mom about this, her mom gave her money, and then she was on her way. Alexis tweeted that she actually felt like she was looking cute, and she headed out in her dad's 2003 white Nissan Maxima. Alexis's curfew was at midnight, and she was never one to miss curfew. If she was going to be a few minutes late, she would call her parents, and so her mother, who worked overnight shifts, didn't realize anything was wrong, but her grandmother, who lived with them, did the next morning when she awoke and found no sign of Alexis. She was not in her bed, the car was not back in the driveway, and they had not heard from her since that night. When they couldn't get a hold of her, they called the police almost immediately, and the search party was put together so quickly because of the amount of friends she had in the area, as well as social media followers. They all gathered as quickly as they could and began to search using Alexis's Find My iPhone app as their kind of target range on where they needed to go. Alexis was standing at 5 feet 7 inches, weighing about 156 pounds, with brown eyes and black hair. She was last seen wearing floral pants, as well as a long-sleeved burgundy top. She also had brown boots and a gray purse with her at the time. State police were called to look for Alexis, as well as the FBI, and search helicopters were sent out as well. The first evidence they found of where Alexis could possibly be was her father's car, and that was found in Charlottesville, 45 minutes away, the complete opposite direction of where Alexis said she was going. This was found in the Carm-like 6 movie theater parking lot. A tip had been sent in by a man who was walking through this parking lot and saw that this car was abandoned. When they went to search footage from all of the security cameras around the area, they found that someone had left this car and they had footage of it. It was April 4th at around 10:30 p.m., the day after Alexis went missing, and this man came and parked this car. But unfortunately, this footage was far too grainy for them to identify anyone as the driver. But Alexis wasn't with him. Then it was back to square one, or so it seemed. Then surveillance footage was released to the public of Alexis from the day she went missing. And this was found because police began investigating on where she could have gone between the time she left her house and going to her destination. And that is when they came up with the Liberty gas station, which is now Shell, which is about 8 miles from her hometown in Livingston. Now, it would be the perfect opportunity as like a first-time fill-up for her to be able to travel that 40-mile distance. Now, whether that would have been to where she said she was going, Lynchburg, or to Charlottesville, they didn't know yet, but they knew that this would probably be the first time that she would fill up, and also the fact that this is where all of the teenagers in the area would actually hang out. It was a super popular hangout at the time, and so they decided to check the surveillance footage there. And what they found was Alexis going to this gas station at around 7:15 the night she went missing. Now, the clerk said that she was talking to a man in the parking lot, but she came inside the gas station and appeared super happy. But investigators were now believing that something had happened at this gas station because they pinged Alexis's cell phone to get the last ping that was ever recorded from her cell phone to find out where her location could possibly have been. And it pinged only a mile away from this gas station. And so after that, they began scouring all of the security footage, trying to find anything that could lead them to someone coming in contact with her or a reason why she had disappeared. And that is when they found something so small, such a chance encounter, that it could be nothing or it could be everything. You see, a man had held a door for Alexis to the gas station, and this man didn't make eye contact, they didn't talk. Alexis didn't even really say thank you, she just kind of walked out as you do, minding her own business. But what really got to them was the fact that he had a very prominent neck tattoo and a camouflage Suburban in the parking lot. They kept this man in the back of their minds as they began searching down the highway. It was a main highway that this gas station was on, Route 29, and they began searching everything. And 2.5 miles later, they came upon an abandoned house surrounded by greenery. I mean, you really had to search to find this place. And right next to it, they found the camouflage Suburban. And when they knocked on the door to see who was inside, out came a man with a neck tattoo of a duck. He was 48-year-old Randy Allen Taylor, and on August 11th, 8 days after Alexis had gone missing, he was arrested and charged with felony abduction by force. You see, they had gone to this abandoned place with his car, and they found a camper there as well with a video camera recording the driveway. Now, Randy didn't show any signs of distress or panic and even let them inside without them having to be forceful about it. But they still arrested him anyway. And I'll tell you why. When the investigators went inside with Randy, they found, as they looked around, something so minute, just like how they looked on the footage and found this random man holding the door for her and thought maybe it could be connected. The same thing happened in his camper, where they found something so small sparkling on the ground up at them. They picked it up, and it was a small stud, as like an earring or a nose piercing. They also searched more and found a broken fingernail. And then when they searched the bed, they found on the pillow a black hair. And while they sent those in to be tested for DNA, they went back to the surveillance footage at this gas station to match Randy to the guy holding the door. And it in fact was him. And even more incriminating, they now looked to see where this Suburban, his Suburban, had gone and where her car had gone afterwards. And strangely enough, you could see on the surveillance footage Randy's Suburban go by northbound, the direction of his trailer, and then right after is the 2003 Nissan that belonged to Alexis's father, following right after him. But Randy said he did not know what had happened. He hadn't even met Alexis, that he had been drunk all day long and didn't remember anything. And that is when the DNA tests of the items at Randy's trailer came back, and they were a match to Alexis Murphy. At this point, Randy finally said, okay, yes, he had been with her that day. He did suddenly remember that he had been with her, but that they had it all wrong. Randy said that Alexis and a black man with dreadlocks had gone to his trailer that day to buy drugs, and they had both come in, drank a few beers, but then they both left in separate cars, and Alexis was laughing and smiling, and that was the last time he saw her. And he could even name this man that was with Alexis, Damien Bradley. They tracked down this Damien almost immediately, and he began to tell them that he really didn't even know Alexis, that he had worked at the gas station for a while. They were friends on Facebook, but they had never really been in the same room together. He also was willing to give DNA to match to Randy's trailer to see if they could find anything of him there as well, connecting him to this whole story. Nothing they found was a match, and he also had an alibi that he was out of town at the time. His DNA didn't match, and he also said he didn't even have a car, and Randy had said they had gone off in separate cars. So this made Randy's claims false, making him look even more guilty than he had before. And not only that, Randy already had a criminal record, and he had already been involved in another young woman's missing persons case. We'll get into that little tidbit here in a little bit. But also on his record was assault charges, statutory rape, arson, grand larceny, brandishing with a firearm. And with all of this, it was enough to arrest him on abduction. But he continued to tell them that he had nothing to do with it. He went into more detail about that day, saying when he went to the gas station, he was only going to buy cigarettes, and Alexis was there pumping her gas. And Alexis was the one who said something to him because she had seen him smoking a few weeks prior, and so she mentioned something to him about marijuana. At this point, Randy said he was looking to get some, and Alexis said that she had a guy, and so they went off together back to Randy's trailer, where they drank and smoked for about an hour before both Alexis and this other man went off into separate vehicles. When Randy was arrested, Alexis's family thought that they recognized him. They couldn't shake the feeling that he looked very familiar. And when they kind of looked into his background, they found that he had worked at a car dealership, the same one their family had purchased a car from, and he was the one who handed them the keys. And people in the area, they all knew, it was a very small knit community, they all knew Randy, but most people knew him because of how much he creeped them out. The clerks at this Liberty gas station, they said he would park his Suburban in the corner and he would just stop and stare, watching everyone, and they always felt so uncomfortable when he was around. Then investigators got a tip that August 3rd, where she had gone missing, about 45 minutes before she was spotted at the gas station with him as well, he had been at a porn shop, and he had gotten some explicit material, and they were afraid that this led to a sexual motive, meaning that he probably did something even more horrific than they were thinking. And this is the point where they realized they needed even more evidence to make sure that Randy stayed in jail, that they could convict him of it. And that is when they got a search warrant and headed back to his trailer, where they began searching through everything once again. And that is when they found something they had missed before. Balled up under the couch was a shirt, and inside this shirt was an extension and false eyelashes. There was blood stained on the shirt, and when they looked at the surveillance footage, it matched the same shirt Randy was wearing when he opened the door for Alexis. But that was in the trailer that was on the grounds, and they decided to search the abandoned house that was also in the same vicinity. And so they went over there and they found something even more disturbing, because they found a book of pornographic material where it was these naked women all over the pages. But that wasn't even the worst part. Their faces had been cut out, and some other girls had been placed over top of it. It wasn't Alexis, but it was the same girl every time. And looking further into it, they found that it was Randy's co-worker's daughter. So after finding this gruesome book and this disturbing detail in this case, they weren't necessarily excited when they found Alexis's cell phone 15 feet from the camper, shattered with the battery ripped out. Yet Randy was still claiming innocence. But that didn't stop them from charging him with murder 5 months after her disappearance in January of 2014. And this was even without a body, because they believed that the forensic evidence implemented him in what they were now regarding as her murder and not just a disappearance. And the law does not require a body for a commission of murder, so they continued with the trial. His trial began April 25th of 2004, and Randy pled not guilty, but there had been so many signs that there was a violent struggle in this trailer, and Alexis's mother testified that she had talked with her daughter about what to do in the situation and that she would have fought back. It had also been found that the night that the man in the grainy surveillance footage had dropped off Alexis's car in that parking lot of the movie theater, Randy was seen 4 minutes away at an Applebee's. When he was interviewed about this, he had said that he had been dropped off by a friend, he ate, and took a cab home. It took the jury 6 hours of deliberation before they found Randy Allen Taylor guilty of first-degree murder and abduction with intent to defile. He was given 2 life sentences, but he didn't even get to hear that verdict, because when Alexis's mother was testifying, saying that the last 10 months had been basically living hell for her, Randy got angry, got up, and tried to go out, and so they actually let him out of the courtroom and he didn't even hear his verdict. But remember when I told you that Randy had also been connected to another missing persons case? Well, there were many missing girls in the area at the time, and some of them, their bodies have never been found. And it was thought that possibly Alexis wasn't Randy's first victim, because at the time, the cases had never been solved. 4 years prior to Alexis's disappearance, on October 17, 2009, a 20-year-old Virginia Tech student, Morgan Harrington, went missing in the same town that Alexis's car had been found, Charlottesville, Virginia. She had gone to a Metallica concert that evening at the campus arena, and the next morning her purse was found in the parking lot, but she was nowhere to be found. And her friends from that night that she had gone with had said she had gotten a nosebleed and tried to go to the bathroom and found her way outside somehow and didn't know how to get back in, and the security wouldn't let her. After that, the last time she was spotted was on a bridge, and it was thought that she was headed into town to her aunt's house who lived in Charlottesville. And unfortunately, she was not seen after that until 3 months later, in January of 2010, when a farmer was checking his fences and found Morgan's remains. They found DNA on a t-shirt that was nearby, but it didn't connect to anyone in the database, only to a previous unsolved crime. This previous crime had happened in 2005 in Fairfax, Virginia, where a woman who had gone to a grocery store noticed a man was kind of watching her. And following her around, she looked at him, but he didn't really do anything at that point, so she headed home, and she was actually walking home. But when she got to her front door, she noticed that someone was still behind her, and before she knew it, someone was running behind her. And at this point, she was dragged into the woods in the nearby area by her apartment complex, and this man began to sexually assault her. The only reason that he stopped was because someone drove up and shined their flashlights at him, causing him to get up and flee. But this woman not only had a description of this man, but also the DNA under her fingernails from where she tried to claw at him. But there was nobody in the database, so they only logged the DNA that now connected them to this murder. Then it was September 13th, 2010, and a 19-year-old named Samantha Clark went missing just minutes from Charlottesville in Orange, Virginia. She had been talking to her brother that night at about midnight and said that she was going to go, she'd be back by morning, and she just left with her house key, but was never seen again, and her body has never been found. Then on the literal same date, 4 years later in 2014, 18-year-old Hannah Graham disappeared from Charlottesville as well. Hannah had just started her second year at the University of Virginia. She was in off-campus housing, and that night she went out to dinner with some of her friends, and afterwards they decided to go to some bars. But at about 1:06 in the morning, her friends kind of got lost from her, and she had texted one of them saying that she didn't know where she was kind of lost, and that she needed help getting to this party that they were at. But after that, she was never heard from again. Police did find surveillance footage from that night that was so odd, because at about 12:55, Hannah was running past a gas station, just running. Then you can see her at the Charlottesville downtown mall at about 1:06 when she texted her friend. But you can also see a man with dreadlocks following behind her very suspiciously. And just a few minutes later, he has his hands around Hannah as though he's just kind of holding her like he's her boyfriend. And then they walk away, and Hannah's nowhere to be found again. 5 weeks later, her remains were found in an abandoned property that were only 5 miles away from where Morgan Harrington remains were found. But when a tip was called in for Hannah Graham's case, all of these cases were about to be flipped upside down, because this tip said that the man in the footage with her with the dreadlocks was a man named Jesse Leroy Matthew, and they decided they needed to find where this man was immediately. They tracked him down, and he wasn't very cooperative with them. He was very standoffish, and he demanded a lawyer. He demanded that they leave, and so they did. But soon after, he himself walked in to the police station demanding a lawyer, and they told him, he had to do that by himself. They couldn't really help him with that. And that is when they decided, the detectives did, that they were going to follow Jesse. And so they began to do that, and he was just doing normal things, but he must have caught on, and eventually he fled from them, and they couldn't find him at all. Soon after, they got an arrest warrant for Jesse Matthew, and 4 days later he was found on a beach in a tent and arrested. And that was in Texas now. But he was brought back to Virginia. They believed they had caught Hannah Graham's killer. But then the people who had worked on this Fairfax assault, where this woman had been sexually assaulted and the only thing that saved her was the headlights, they decided that this description that she had given years prior matched Jesse to a T. And so they had the DNA to that case. All they needed to do was match it. And if that matched, that could mean that Morgan's case could be solved as well, because the DNA found at her crime scene had matched the assault's crime scene. Jesse was tested, and it was a match for both the Fairfax assault and Morgan Harrington's murder. He was sentenced to 3 life sentences for the assault, but then entered a plea deal to avoid the death penalty. He pled guilty to the murder of Hannah Graham and Morgan Harrington, giving him another 4 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole. But what about Samantha Clark? And did they arrest the wrong man and convict the wrong man for Alexis Murphy's murder? The police began to get really worried, because in Alexis's case, Randy had described this man that looked a lot like Jesse. And they didn't listen to him, and they were afraid that they possibly should have. Although I will say, all Randy really said was a black man with dreadlocks. That's how he described it. Or cornrows, I think is how he put it. And this man had dreadlocks. There are many people with that description, and it's not super specific, but I could see where they wanted to double check. But Randy was still insistent that he had nothing to do with it, and so they thought that the least they could do was test Jesse's DNA against things found in the trailer, in Randy's trailer. And so that's what they did, and they found that it was not a match at all, and they figured after that they could rule Jesse out of Alexis's case completely. And that is when Randy decides to speak out to Alexis's family, saying that he would tell them where her body was if he could get his life sentence, his 2 life sentences, reduced to only 20 years. Everyone was so surprised at this, including Alexis's family, but they told him absolutely not, that they were not going to let a monster out, no matter what. Because everyone was beginning to believe that Alexis was not Randy's first victim. And you know when I told you that he was involved in a previous missing persons case? Well, that was the case of Samantha Clark, the one we just talked about. Now, Samantha Clark had lived in the same exact trailer park as Randy at the time, and he was the last person to talk to Samantha before she disappeared, and her body has never been found, just like Alexis's hasn't. And they are currently trying to convict Randy of Samantha Clark's murder and get him the death penalty. But does this mean that there were 2 serial killers in the area at almost the same time? The only thing that I can say is I'm so happy that both of them are now locked up and can no longer do this to anybody else. And I also want to quickly talk to you about the Help Save the Next Girl organization that's in honor of Morgan Harrington. It's to help women to be alert for predatory dangers. And it's in honor of Morgan, but what I think is even more beautiful is that Alexis's aunt actually works with this organization to help them as well. There's also an Alexis Murphy scholarship fund if you would like to donate to that as well. But Alexis Murphy is unfortunately still missing to this day, and her family deserves answers, and they shouldn't have to give in to a monster like Randy to get them. So if you know anything, please come forward to the Nelson County Sheriff's Office at 434-263-7050. And I'd love to hear your thoughts about this case down below. I think that it's quite strange that just because they didn't find any DNA from Jesse Matthews in this trailer of Randy's, that they ruled him out completely. But I guess since Jesse's victims' bodies were found, it kind of leads you to believe he's not that good at hiding them, or he wants them to be found, meaning that he would have told about Alexis's case and where she was. And I think that there's so much evidence against Randy and Alexis's case. I just so wish that he wouldn't get anything out of telling them where the body is. I wish that they could just get it out of him regardless. That's the least he could do. But I think there's so much evidence. I also find that when he was telling the story back and he was saying that Alexis had seen him prior to at the gas station smoking, which is how she knew to ask him, that makes me think that he was actually stalking her for a very long time before this, or at least a little bit, or had at least seen her before and was very intrigued by her and thought that this opportunity at the gas station was the perfect one to do whatever he wanted with her. There could be possibly many more than just Alexis and Samantha, and I think maybe people from various different counties or states should be looking into if this Randy Allen Taylor could possibly be the killer in another unsolved case, because I don't think that there is a possibility that Alexis was his only one, or even just Alexis and Samantha. I think this man has done many horrible things, and I just can't believe that they kind of continue to try to think and say, oh, maybe it's not him, when they found things like extensions and eyelashes and blood in his trailer. That just baffles me. I think that he was very persuasive and very good at getting the people in his case to believe what he was saying, and that is the scariest part of all, that possibly they were being tricked. I mean, I don't know, but that's just kind of what it seemed like. I mean, yes, you want to cover all your bases and make sure, but if you knew this guy was the killer, you wouldn't care about, testing the DNA of Jesse Matthews against it. But I guess it is just another good thing to be able to say, we know for sure it's not him, or at least they say for sure it's not him. I'd love to hear all your opinions down below about this. What do you think happened to Alexis Murphy? I wish in my heart I could say that she is still alive and well and just, you know, hiding out somewhere. Maybe she didn't want to be found, but in this case, I just don't think there's any way that she was a runaway or that she is just on her own somewhere. I think that something happened to her, and I just hope that she didn't suffer for long. That may be a horrible thing to say, but I just hope since she did have to go, or if she had to go, that it was the least painful experience she could have ever had. Please remember to be kind in the comments down below to the family, to everybody involved in this case, as well as me. I'm just giving the information out, and I mean no disrespect to anybody who could ever stumble across this video, anybody in Alexis's family. I truly just wanted to get the information out there and share it with as many people as possible, because you never know what somebody can know. But make sure to share the information or Alexis's picture or this video if you want to get her case back out there, since it has been a while since anything's been done in it. But don't ever forget to speak up. Your voice is powerful enough, and I love you to absolute pieces. Okay. Bye.